Hey everyone, welcome into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. I'm Bobby Sylvester, joined by Mike Degliere, who has a face tattoo. Tags, why don't you explain why you have that face tattoo right now?
Yeah, so Bobby and I had a bet last week that if the Patriots did beat the Jets by more points than the Cowboys beat the Dolphins, that I would have to put a face tattoo on, and I let Bobby pick it. Unfortunately, he was kind enough where if you guys can see, it's like a web here, and then it's a cat. So he thought it was hilarious. I think he honestly could have made me do a lot worse. So I just want to thank Mr. Sylvester for not requiring me to put on like a butterfly or something like that because I gave him a lot of options at my local store and he told me to go with this one. So thanks for that, Bobby.
Yeah, well, I wanted you to look cool too, man. I don't want to like lose viewers because you've got like a unicorn on your face or something like that. You look good, man. I think you should keep the face tattoo.
My son thought so. He thought it was really cool.
You actually
But
look a ton like him. I was when I saw you, I was like, man, I never realized you looked that much like him because you're not wearing your glasses.
yeah, the glasses. I'm without glasses, otherwise you wouldn't be able to see it as much. And
Right.
I put on the backwards hat. I'm feeling like Michael Scarn today, from The Office. You know, when Michael Scott turns into his character, like I'm totally out of character right now.
So, guys, we're going to talk waiver wire pickups today. I imagine we're going to have some time to answer your questions here at the end as well. We do need to talk about the Saquon Barkley thing, though. Tags, he's going to miss 4 to 8 weeks with a high ankle sprain. With the Giants not competing, are you expecting to be closer to those 8 weeks? Maybe even hold him out the whole season just to have him ready for next year?
Yeah, I mean the Giants aren't going to be competing for a playoff spot this year. That's just not going to happen. Even though the division has got off to somewhat of a slow start with Philly, Washington, starting 1-2 and 0-3. But the Cowboys are the front runner in that division. The NFC is just a tough division, like a conference to actually get in the playoffs for. So they're building for the future. They understand that. Saquon, I would anticipate, like from what we're hearing, this I don't even know if it's more than a high ankle sprain, because high ankle sprains, the most I've ever seen someone miss is like 4 or 5 weeks. So to
Right.
hear like 4 to 8 week timeline, I don't know if there's something else going on with that. I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to speculate. But when we hear that 8 week timeline, it's probably closer to that 8 weeks, just considering what he means to
Sure.
that franchise and that they're not competing this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we're going to talk about his replacement, Wayne Gallman, here in just a second. We've got 10 waiver wire guys to talk about. Tex and I both like all of these 10. We'll start with DJ Chark, who I think is very clearly the number one wide receiver in Jacksonville. He's got 4 times as many air yards as Dede Westbrook, and he's been phenomenal through 3 weeks. He's the number 6 fantasy football wide receiver at this point. How much do you expect it to keep up with Gardner Minshew under center tags?
I mean, Minshew's going to regress in terms of touchdown percentage. As of right now, he's throwing a touchdown 5%, 5.7% of the time, which is, Bobby's talked about the fact that like Tom Brady's career mark, 5.5%. So like when you see Minshew above that, it's okay that we could say Minshew is actually going to be a quarterback in the league. That's fine. You
Mm-hmm.
could say that, but to say that he's the best 6th round pick of all time is discrediting Tom Brady. So we're going to see regression here. Leonard Fournette is going to eventually find the end zone, but DJ
Mm-hmm.
Chark is definitely a guy that I'm starting to. I've moved him up every single week because of the way that Minshew has looked. I was very questionable at the beginning, but he looks like a competent quarterback with Leonard Fournette struggling a little bit. Defenses still have to account for him up front. So
Yeah.
Chark, I mean, he looked like the most improved receiver on this team, and if Minshew can get him the ball, he's like entering that. It's almost like a weekly question, right? Where it's like, do I start him or him? Before it was like, do I want to take a shot on this guy as like a long shot? But now he's actually in the wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 conversation that you're going to
Mm-hmm.
contemplate starting most weeks.
It reminds me of Tyler Boyd at this point last year, where everyone was like, well, I mean, it's Tyler Boyd. Do we actually want to start him every week? Well,
Right.
if he keeps producing, yeah, absolutely. He's the number one on his offense, and that's what DJ Chark is. So I've got him as a wide receiver 3 rest of the season, that I think you play in 75 to 80% of matchups and feel good about it. So, Tex, how much fab are you spending on DJ Chark? And is he your number one wide receiver?
Yeah, I don't want to say he's number one just because I think that the next player we're going to talk about is a guy that you should definitely consider with that pick.
Mhm.
But Chark is definitely up there. It just really depends on where you're at as a team, right? Like if you're looking at a waiver wire that has Sterling Shepard on it, because he was available in a lot of people just moved on from him because they felt like the Giants were a hot mess, kind of like the Dolphins. But now people are going back to get him. So it just really
Yeah.
depends on who's in your wire, how deep your league is. But if you're hurting at the wide receiver position, you need someone like him. I mean, I'd probably be willing to spend, 15%. I don't know if you need to go that high, but that's probably my max.
The next wide receiver on our list, by the way, is Golden Tate. And last year before the trade, tags again, he was on pace for 101 receptions, 1,192 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. That's better than the season Keenan Allen put up. And I get it. He was traded to Philadelphia. Didn't do much. He didn't know the playbook. It was under Doug Peterson. So Doug Peterson was playing like 5 wide receivers pretty much equally because that's what he does. He's a fantasy football, ruiner of all things. But now he's in a different offense. He's going to be likely playing in the slot with the New York Giants with an improved, an upgrade from Eli Manning to Daniel Jones. I think Golden Tate, wide receiver 3 most weeks, some weeks wide receiver 2. You start
Yeah.
him every week.
Yeah, I mean, especially knowing what's going on with Saquon Barkley right now, because Barkley, if he is going to miss that, let's say 6 to 8 weeks with an ankle injury, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more. And I was looking forward to the schedule. Like Wayne Gallman is going to be a very, people are going to aggressively bid on him this week because of what happened to Saquon Barkley. But their matchups, I mean, they're going to play Minnesota and New England after they play the Redskins this week. So the schedule is going to get tougher. They're going to have to throw a bit more. Golden Tate coming back. It's going to be a little hard for him to, I don't know if you'll be able to start him right away, just considering that him and Daniel Jones Daniel Jones is developing rapport with wide receivers and tight ends right now. Like him and Sterling Shepard on the same page. Cody Latimer is going to be back on the field this week. So it's like Golden Tate. My question about is where he goes in the offense, because Sterling Shepard has played 70% of his snaps in the slot this year, and that's massive, right? They're not the Cardinals. They don't have 2 slot wide receivers, so one of them is going to have to play on the perimeter. I'm guessing it's probably going to be Shepard, considering where he's at in his career. But Golden Tate, if he goes into the slot, it's obviously a big it's a big plus for Golden Tate as a safety valve for someone like a young quarterback like Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I think Golden Tate is a very good pickup. I'd spend $8-9 fab bucks on him if he's still available. I don't know if that's going to get him, but he's been on the waiver wire this long that I would imagine that will do the trick. I like him a little bit more than DJ Chark this week, and he's my number 1 wide receiver. Tex, there's one other wide receiver we're going to talk about later on. We'll get there in a moment, but first, Ronald Jones, running back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had 14 carries in week 1. 3 carries in week 2, 15 carries in week 3. What's it going to be moving forward?
This is frustrating, man. Like I really did want to hold out hope for Ronald Jones, because he looks good when he gets the ball in this offense. We know that Bruce Arians' offense, it does produce fantasy potential at the running back position. So it was like, okay, Ronald Jones he looked like the best running back on the team in week 1. Then week 2 comes, Peyton Barber flashes a little bit. And it's like, okay, here we go again. They have to go with Peyton Barber this week. And then they go back to Ronald Jones and he looks good again. He caught a 41-yard pass too. So
yes,
it's almost like Bruce Arians is teasing us. It's not a backfield that I can really trust right now. So if you're able to snag him, that's good, because he's like a guy to have on your bench in case he does earn that starting role and they start trusting him a bit more. But if you do land him and you see somebody else in the waiver wire bid maybe a dollar or two less than you did, that's the time where I might go to that owner and say, hey, I got Ronald Jones. Obviously you missed out on him. Let's work out a trade. Like I'm willing to trade him and package another piece, so it doesn't seem like you're so willing to trade him. But at the same time, I don't think that I want to tie myself to this backfield if it's going to be this unpredictable.
I think that's fair. I mean, if we knew he was going to be the starter moving forward, I'd consider him about the same as we thought of Lamar Miller the past couple of years, a fringe RB2, RB3 that you play almost every week because he's going to get a lot of work and a good offense. But we don't know if he's going to be that. I don't want to play these games every week. I agree with you, Tags. So I've got Ronald Jones at 2 fab right now. Wouldn't mind getting him. I think he's got upside, but more than likely he's just going to rot on your bench. I think the same is probably true with Darrell Williams. But if you want to talk about upside, Darrell Williams has some serious upside just because of the offense he's in. Andy Reid turns, Miami Dolphins leftovers, Damian Williams, into fantasy gold. He was a fantasy superstar to end the season, and he can do the same with Darrell Williams, who looked great last week as the starter. But I'm not expecting this to continue. I mean, Damian Williams is coming back. LaShawn McCoy is going to be healed from his injury shortly. Does Darrell Williams have any chance to be the starter? And if he does that make him worth a fab bid?
He should be rostered, that's for sure. The question is, how much should he net on the waiver wire? Knowing that LaShawn McCoy re-injured the same ankle that he came into the game with, it's like that could be a reason that they hold him back and say, you know what, we're doing well as a team right now. We don't need you to rush back. Damian Williams was ruled out early last week, so there's a chance that those two are inactive this week. There's an actual chance. They're playing in Detroit. It's a winnable game for them even without those guys.
Not a good matchup for running backs though.
Yeah, I mean, so yes and no. They have struggled a little bit against the run. It's because I think they focus more on that secondary this year, because the Detroit defense, like the secondary last year was the weak point. This year it's been somewhat of a strong point, whereas their front seven haven't stopped the run like they did last year. But regardless of that, Darrell Williams might be the starter for this team, and he might be the player that people wanted Darwin Thompson to be. They were like, well, now he's third on the depth chart. No, Darrell Williams, he actually caught 5 passes last week. That's something I did not expect. I expected if McCoy and Williams were out, I expected a timeshare where Darrell Williams would have got most of the carries, but I thought Darwin Thompson would have been more involved on passing downs, but he really wasn't. So Darrell Williams, yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a Spencer Ware situation. That's the type of running back that I view him as, is a guy that can get it done in the passing game too. He's obviously getting carries in the ground, played well against Baltimore. He should be rostered. And if you own someone like LaShawn McCoy or Damian Williams, honestly, I'd probably be willing to bid. I mean, maybe 8 to 10 fab bucks. I understand
Wow.
that's
Okay.
kind of high, but in those situations, you really need a handcuff, and that's a valuable handcuff.
So you'd rather have him than Ronald Jones?
Yeah, I would.
What about then Wayne Gallman, the immediate replacement for Saquon Barkley? I don't want to say he's the full, 4 to 8 week replacement, because who knows? Maybe they go out and sign C.J. Anderson, Jay Ajayi, trade for a running back. We talked yesterday with Paul Charchian, and he said Mike Boone. I was really excited about that. But, they could make one of these moves, because I don't think Gallman's the answer. Or do you think because they're not competing, they're just going to roll with what they have?
I do believe they're going to roll with what they have for right now. If Gallman looks terrible, they'll move on. They'll grab somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, like Gallman, he's averaged just over 4 yards per carry in his role. Like he had a starting role in 2017. Barkley came in 2018. He's been in a backup role. But coming out of Clemson, he was viewed as a 3-down back, a guy that could play all 3 downs, and he still is that guy. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He's done it well throughout his time in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have much burst that most feature backs do, but at the same time, let's not pretend that many running backs would have done what Saquon Barkley did last year. This offensive line has improved over the last 2 years. So Gallman, he's going to be valuable this week. I'm going to rank him probably as like a low-end RB2 this week. So if you're in need of a starter right now, yes, he's absolutely somebody that I would snag and I'd be willing to pay for. If you started out 1-2, 0-3, and you need a win and you have trouble with the running back position, Gallman's definitely worth a pickup. But understand that after this game, you might want to sell high if you can do that. If your league, values players from week to week, I would look to sell high because, again, they're playing Minnesota and New England over the next 2 weeks, 2 matchups that are going to go negative on him really quick.
I would agree with that. I'm not spending more than 10, 12 fab bucks on Gallman. If you're desperate, it's going to take 25. I mean, I guess go ahead and do that if you need a starting running back, but I wouldn't feel good about it. I don't think he has much upside. And I would imagine it's probably 50-50 that he's not going to be the starter in 3 or 4 weeks. So we'll see what happens. We're going to move on to the next slide here in just a moment. But first, if you're just tuning in and you're looking at tags and who this guy is with no glasses and he's got a kitty cat face tattoo, tags again, can you remind them why you're wearing a kitty cat tattoo?
I lost a bet to Bobby, basically because because the Patriots defense special teams didn't come through on for me because the Patriots were winning by a ton, and then all of a sudden there was 2 defensive special teams touchdowns by the Jets, which totally screwed me because the Cowboys beat the Dolphins by more than that, and that was our bet. Bobby had the Cowboys, and I had the Patriots. It wasn't great, so here I am with a cat and a spider's web on my face.
Hey Tags, if you can hear me, I think my Bluetooth headphones died, so
all right,
flip these bad boys on. Sorry about that, man.
All right, so while Bobby's taking care of that, Bobby, just let me know when you're back, but we can kind of move on to the next player in the list, and that's going to be Dante Pettis. This is a player that if he's on your waiver wire, it means that people kind of weren't holding out hope for him. And it's not to say that you should give up on him right now, you should totally abandon all hope, but he is still 3rd on this team in wide receiver snaps. I know he caught a touchdown this past week, but now he's going into his bye, so he's going to do you no good if you're grabbing him off the waiver wire. He's someone that if you're in a 12-team league, you have 6-7 bench spots, he should have a spot on benches because, again, if he works his way back into the starting lineup, it's not like Marquise Goodwin is going to be a featured wide receiver. Deebo Samuel is still a rookie. Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't looked great. So there's like a lot of reasons to be skeptical about him. That's why Dante Pettis is just like $1 for me. If you want to spend $1 at that budget because you have a bench spot, that's fine. Bobby, where are you at on Pettis?
I think this is a lot like Ronald Jones, except less upside, right? Yeah. I mean, Dante Pettis at one point was being drafted in the top 35 wide receivers because of Kyle Shanahan and what he likes to do with wide receivers like Dante Pettis. But he's in his doghouse. He's splitting the workload with 4 or 5 other wide receivers. And this is an offense where, okay, yeah, Ronald Jones could be a top 20 running back. Dante Pettis isn't going to be a top 20 wide receiver. So, I mean, what are we hoping for? That he's a wide receiver 3? I mean, I guess you can put someone like that at the end of your bench, but I think that's only for deeper leagues. There's another name on down here that I would much rather have than Dante Pettis because he has a lot more upside. By the way, I wanted to say this. I'm growing out my mustache right now because of the bet that Tags and I are going to have next week. And just in case I lose, I want to have a good mustache.
Yeah, me too. I'm not gonna like trim my beard as I typically do. So this is like a sneak peek into the bet that's gonna take place next week, and it's a good one. And you guys are gonna like
Yeah.
it more than this face tattoo, I promise.
Hey, if you guys like Tag's face tattoo, give Tags a like down there. It does tell our bosses that you're enjoying the show, and it is really helpful to us so that we can keep doing this stuff every week. Yeah, and hit the subscribe button. I have a live stream coming up on Thursday where I talk start sit. I'm going to answer your questions there for about 45 minutes. Tags does an hour-long show on Sunday mornings. So when you subscribe, you'll get notifications for those so you don't miss out on future content.
Yep.
The next player we want to talk about here is the top QB on both of our lists. Tags, it's Daniel Jones. I don't really love him rest of the season. I've got him in my top 20. You can use him in 2 QB leagues, absolutely. But I love him this week because of the streamer matchup against Washington, where he's in my top 12 quarterbacks. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, this is a great week to stream quarterbacks. There are so many matchups, like going through it. Like there's guys that I have ranked 18th that I'd feel confident starting a quarterback. And Daniel Jones is one of those guys up against Washington. Washington is one of the teams in the league that is legitimately below average in like every single category, including when it comes to quarterbacks. But knowing that Saquon Barkley is out, knowing that the Giants defense is the Dolphins light. By the way, if you guys haven't heard that on the podcast, I've dubbed that. You make sure to use it in conversations that the Giants are Dolphins light on defense. But the good part about this is that his defense is going to allow points. It's going to create negative game script, which is going to create more passing opportunities, more rushing attempts for him, all those things with no Saquon Barkley. But the good thing is that Daniel Jones could actually score points. They actually have some talent on the offensive side of the ball, whereas the Dolphins don't. So I think this is a great scenario where you're going to get some garbage time. It's almost like the Bucs last year where we had Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston as guys that could put up fantasy points because their defense just allowed everyone to score. So
exactly.
Daniel Jones makes for a great starter, a streamer this week. If you're in need of a quarterback, him, Case Keenum, those guys in that matchup should both be scoring points.
So Tags, a lot of people listened to the podcast this morning because we published it last night or whatever, and they heard you talking about, I don't know if I can handle another Bears primetime game. Yeah. I want your reaction. Everyone wants to know what you think about that butt whooping.
It was good to sit back and just like relax through a Bears win. That's the best way for me to put it. It seemed like they dumbed down the playbook, and which was great on Nagy's part. Outside of the fact that for whatever reason they're giving Cordarrelle Patterson like 4 carries a game. I don't understand. Like that guy's been on like 4 different teams now. Like get over it. Cordarrelle Patterson is not a thing in the NFL anymore. He's also old. So move on from that. But outside of that, for Trubisky, he looked a lot better because it seemed like the playbook was just dumbed down and they weren't trying a bunch of tricks. And it worked. Trubisky looked better. I'm not getting excited about the Bears offense just yet, but it was nice as a Bears fan to just sit back and enjoy a win.
And I knew you were going to come into today pretty pumped about the Bears. So I just wanted to make sure I was wearing my Packers jersey so that you remembered what team was in first place in the NFC North.
That defense is the reason they're in first place.
That's right. Yep. They're really good. All right. Paris Campbell, wide receiver. This is the guy I would rather own than Dante Pettis. Are you with me?
Oh, yeah. Paris Campbell's a very sneaky addition this week, and he's not going to cost you a lot of money on the waiver wire, unless maybe like the T.Y. Hilton owner is going to grab him. But a lot of people don't understand what Paris Campbell can become and what he is. He's a bigger, faster version of T.Y. Hilton. Now, granted, he's not the route runner. He's not as smart as T.Y. Hilton is, in terms of a veteran wide receiver, but he brings all those tools with him. And he's only been targeted, I think it's like 5 times, but he's caught all 5 passes. He scored a touchdown on Logan Ryan, one of the better slot cornerbacks in the league, because he just burned him. Like you can't leave him in man coverage. And if T.Y. Hilton is going to miss this game, which I think is likely, I don't think T.Y. Hilton plays. They have their bye week coming up, with a quad injury. I mean, this team has started out pretty hot. I think they have to say, you know what, let's play it safe with him, put Paris, and they can game plan for Paris Campbell to kind of play that T.Y. Hilton role. Again, he may not be as great, but it's going to be production because Jacoby Brissett has showed that he's able to produce fantasy wide receivers. I like Paris Campbell a lot. And to know that his role has been growing after missing much of training camp with a hamstring injury, it's like there's a chance for a breakout in this game this week against Oakland.
So how much fab are you spending on Paris Campbell? Just $1 or $2, right?
Well, I mean, you don't have to spend a lot. If you play in a sharp league and you know that people are going to be onto this, I mean, I'd spend it probably as much as 6 or 7, just because it's like you're trying to anticipate this breakout. Like Terry McLaurin is a guy that people are dying to have on their fantasy teams right now. Paris Campbell might be that guy. You know what I mean? If T.Y. Hilton were to miss time. So Paris Campbell is worth that to stash. And if you need to play him this week, if T.Y. Hilton's out this week, I think he's going to be one of like the plays that is going to be so sneaky and nobody's going to really see it coming. But I think I'm going to rank him as a top 36 wide receiver if T.Y. Hilton's out.
That would be excellent. Hey, by the way, I'm paying attention to the comments right now, and somebody's new to the show or late to the show. They want to know what was up with the cat face. Basically, what it comes down to is I beat Tags in a bet again, and so he has to wear a tattoo on his face.
Mm-hmm. It's not ideal.
And I saw a comment over here, a question. We are going to get to the Q&A in a second, but I did not want to forget about this one. Somebody asked if Sony Michel or Todd Gurley are even worth keeping anymore. Don't drop either of them unless you're like in a 4-team league. We'll get to the other questions here in a moment. I just really didn't want that guy to drop Sony Michel or Todd Gurley. I don't love them rest of the season, but they're definitely not droppable. All right, all right, Tags. Next guy is Will Dissly. He's our top tight end. A lot of people have been asking Chris Herndon or Will Dissly. I'm going with Dissly.
Dissly 100%. I mean, like, we talked with Charchian about this on the show yesterday, and the fact that the Seahawks coming into the year, we knew they had Tyler Lockett, but all the other wide receivers were question marks, right? Like we had DK Metcalf, who had a limited route tree that some people didn't believe in. Then we had guys like Will Dissly, who had a very small sample size in the NFL. We didn't know what to expect. And now that Chris Carson is dealing with fumble issues, he's like their primary pass catcher out of the backfield. So if he's not trusted, those targets have to go somewhere. Dissly, like the running back tight end targets, they correlate so much. And I think that's why we're starting to see Dissly get targeted more. On top of that, he has like the best matchup that you could ever ask for this week against the Arizona Cardinals. Like they have been smoked by every single tight end. Like I'm pretty sure now it is 3 straight weeks where they've allowed a top 2 tight end performance.
Yep. All right. I've got Will Dissly in my top 8 tight ends this week. I think he's also better than Herndon rest of the season. Yeah. So that's definitely the direction I would go. How do you compare him to the running backs that we talked about? I mean, would you rather have Will Dissly than Ronald Jones?
Probably. I mean, if you need a tight end or if you're like streaming tight ends, I would prioritize Dissly definitely over a bench stash of someone like Ronald Jones, just because it's just so unpredictable. But they should both be rostered. But again, Dissly comes down to you might find yourself a solution for the rest of the season. Like if you're a streamer like me, I grabbed Dissly in a few leagues and I'm kind of like holding out hope. Like maybe this guy is actually a player and maybe he is going to be a guy that I just plug in my lineup. And he may have a few down weeks. Every tight end does, but for the most part, he looks pretty matchup proof. I mean, the Saints were a tough matchup last week and he got it done.
He's getting a great target share as well. What about Darrell Williams?
Ooh, it just depends on roster need. It's always tough to compare different positions. It just really depends on my roster what I need. But if you have someone like, Evan Ingram, Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce at tight end, even Darren Waller, I wouldn't even make a bid on Dissly. Just like, you don't need to. Like, that's the bottom line is you don't, I would rather grab someone like Darrell Williams in that situation.
I would agree with that. Hey, Tags, one other running back that we didn't put on our list. I'm not sure why we didn't do it, but we both like Rex Burkhead moving forward. Sony Michel just looks like a shell of his former self. He's just not the same running back anymore. Like we were worried about, hey, maybe his knee resurfaces and he misses some time. What about his knee is bothering him and he's nowhere near the same running back as a result of it?
I don't know if it is his knee though. I mean, that's the thing is like he doesn't.
Why is he so bad then?
The offensive line hasn't been good. They've dealt with some injuries too. Isaiah Wynn is out right now. They've had some injuries up front that I don't want to miss, but like knowing when he's in the game, defenses will change their packages where it's like Sony Michel's in the field. They're not passing the ball. We could stick a linebacker on him and be okay with it. You can't do that with James White. You can't do that with Rex Burkhead because those guys will outrun linebackers all day. It's not to say Sony Michel can't, but the Patriots clearly don't think that that's a role that he should be like fitted in. So a lot of people are telling me, well, they're just asking him to do like little because, they're saving him for the playoffs. That has never been the Patriot way. Like when they get to like the weeks like 16 and 17, you'll see them rest some players. But seeing Sony Michel average like 2 yards per carry on the season is a joke. Knowing that they've scored like over 30 points every single game and that Sony Michel is like outside the top 40 running backs right now is a joke. Like these things absolutely matter to fantasy football. And while you may disagree in regards to what the Patriots are doing, it's alarming in fantasy football.
So Philip Dorsett, we've got at the bottom of our list. Tags, in the podcast, you talked about him as your number 1 wide receiver. Do you like him still more than Golden Tate?
Yeah, Philip Dorsett is the number one for me, wide receiver. Him, Golden Tate, and DJ Chark are like the top three. Those are the clear cut top three. I think Dorsett might be the number one, knowing that Edelman is already dealing with a rib injury that they haven't ruled him out. So the comment on him was very ominous, and it was that Julian Edelman, his ribs, he's going to be fine, but hasn't been ruled out for this week, and might play this, has a chance to play this week, or hasn't been ruled out. When they say something like that, it makes me feel like there's a good chance he will be ruled out, but they just haven't done it yet,
Yeah.
which means that the rib injury might be more serious than they're letting on. Josh Gordon, he's a guy that's going to see top tier cornerbacks all game long now with Antonio Brown gone. And
Yep.
he's been coming on and off the field with like little nicks and bruises or head injuries, whatever the case is. Whereas Philip Dorsett is doing everything he's supposed to do with targets. It's a tough matchup against the Bills this week, so you may not want to rely on him this week. But I do view him as like a wide receiver 4 moving forward.
Remember Chris Hogan? He's Chris Hogan. We talked about this in the preseason. Who could be Chris Hogan? It's Philip Dorsett, and now he is Chris Hogan with Antonio Brown gone. I think you start Philip Dorsett about half of weeks and maybe more than that. If anything happens to Julian Edelman or Josh Gordon, he's got more upside than anybody we've talked about on this podcast besides maybe Darrell Williams.
Yeah, it's very possible, and he has more weekly startability than those guys because you're tying yourselves to Tom Brady and the Patriots offense, a team that scores points. Which when you're plugging a wide receiver 3 in during bye weeks, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy that maybe has a little bit lower floor, but you're searching for that ceiling to fill your lineup, and Philip Dorsett's got it.
Tags, I just saw our buddy John McGlynn in the comment section. He says he can't take you seriously right now because of the cat on your face.
Tattoo. Yeah, it's something, man. Jonathan, my son, my 2.5-year-old son, he dug it. Like he thinks I should keep it.
That's awesome. All right, hey Tags, let's talk about DST streamers. Who would you go with this week? Do you have one on mind?
I mean, if you're still able to get the Packers, like that's a phenomenal matchup. I like their defense
weeks,
is ridiculous.
baby.
They're pressuring the quarterback nonstop. But pulling up my ranks now, I haven't worked my way through all the games just yet. But I mean, the Chiefs at Detroit, it could be a game, but that also has the potential to be a very high scoring game. So it just depends on who's available in your league. I don't know if people have dropped the Chargers after their slow start. They're going to be a phenomenal play, obviously against the Dolphins, but I'm still working my way through the defenses this week. But if the Packers were available, they should have been picked up a long time ago.
You know, I like the Packers, but this week I like Pittsburgh at home against Cincinnati a little bit more. Indianapolis at home against Oakland. I think both of those are very good streamer matchups.
Yeah, no, that definitely can work. And like to know that Dalton against Pittsburgh, that's like a divisional matchup. Those teams know each other extremely well. So that could be a game for Pittsburgh to get back on track. And they are at home and they need a win. They're 0-3.
Tags, I've been seeing a bunch of people ask if they should drop Latavius Murray. What do you think at this point?
What are you dropping him for is the question I have, because if something were to happen to Kamara, all of a sudden Latavius Murray is like, I wouldn't drop him for someone like Darrell Williams, just because it's similar situations, but there's one guy is still getting carries on a weekly basis. The other guy relied on 2 injuries to get on the field. So, I mean, I would drop him maybe for like a Rashad Penny if he was available, even though Penny's dealing with a hamstring injury himself, but I don't think you have to drop him, but I'm also not opposed to dropping him if there's someone that's really good out there.
If Penny's available on the waiver wire, is he the number one pickup over Philip Dorsett and over Wayne Gallman?
Ooh, if you can afford to keep him on your bench for a couple weeks, because he is dealing with a hamstring injury, and those typically are 2 to 3 week things. And that's the only reason I haven't lowered Chris Carson as much as some people have, just because I don't know if Rashad Penny is going to be available. And it's not like CJ Prosise is going to take the job from Chris Carson. So if you are 3-0 or 2-1 and you're very, very confident in your roster and the fact that you're going to make the playoffs, yeah, he would be my number one.
Okay. And what are you selling right now? What are you selling Saquon Barkley for? What would you hope to acquire if you need to move him so that you can get a couple wins right now?
If you can get someone like Mark Ingram for him, I would do it. And like, I know that sounds like it's like a long shot considering the game that Ingram just had with 3 touchdowns, but it's kind of like that low end RB2, high end RB3 territory where you get into guys like, I would debate taking Devonta Freeman for him. I mean, Freeman has a bad matchup versus Tennessee. But I mean, that's where I'm at. Like, I would definitely take Aaron Jones. I would even take Josh Jacobs for Saquon Barkley right now, because you need to get to the playoffs. Like, that's the number one concern. And Saquon Barkley is not going to be on the field for most of the fantasy regular season. You need to
But Freeman's not going to get you there, man. I've got Freeman out. He's like fringe top 30 for me with with Dirk Cutter there. He's just
I'm not
ruining it.
that low on him. I think that being
Okay,
that this offense is high scoring, he's going to score some touchdowns. I know he hasn't
sure.
yet, but that will come. Maybe not against Tennessee this week, but I'm really down on Saquon. It just depends on where your team is at. And again, if you're 3-0 and you play in a home league where you always make the playoffs and this and that, yeah, you can trade for someone like Saquon and kind of just wait for him to come back. But
Mhm.
it's rough, man. It's rough.
I would do Mark Ingram in a heartbeat. I've got him top 10 rest of the season. I mean, he has been killing it. Perfect offense, and Justice Hill's not competing with him. We thought that was going to be the issue. By the way, you can drop Justice Hill at this point. He didn't do anything against Kansas City either.
Yep.
But yeah, Mark Ingram would be a great target. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, wouldn't that be buying high? The guy selling Mark Ingram thinks he's selling high. And so his value might be a little bit, his trade value might be lower than his actual value at this point. So I mean, you can think of it as buying high as you want, but I think you're buying below the value, his actual value.
He's not going to score 3 touchdowns. I mean, like I thought his ceiling was like 6 touchdowns this year because I figured Lamar Jackson was going to steal some of that upside. And Gus
Yeah.
Edwards is still getting like 6 to 10 carries per game, so he's still involved. If someone's willing to buy high on Mark Ingram, I would sell high because I still think that it's going to be a somewhat limited ceiling for him. The Chiefs, that's a one-off situation.
Nelson wants to know if we should drop Cam Newton for Andy Dalton rest of the season. Which would you rather have, or would you rather just play the streamer game?
I'd rather just play the streaming game. Just kind of go week to week. Like this week, you could stream Daniel Jones and be just fine.
Right.
But Cam Newton is droppable. He is droppable. You can't afford to hold on to a quarterback. They're saying it's a Liz Frank injury now, and those are typically bad. Especially for someone like Cam Newton, who basically, if you take away his ability to run, you take away everything that defenses fear about him. They don't fear his arm. They don't. So, I mean, Kyle Allen, there's a reason that they announced him as the starter this week immediately. I would see Cam as out for another at least 2 or 3 weeks. And
well, if he comes back after 3 weeks, he's still going to be bad. He needs a good month or maybe even 2 off with a Liz Frank injury.
Yep. Foot injuries for guys that run are not great. So yeah, Cam Newton is he's droppable.
You know, I'm really surprised by this. Marshall says Marquez Valdes-Scantling is available. I've seen this 5 or 6 times today on Twitter as well. Mm-hmm. He's available on waivers. Is he worth more than Philip Dorsett? And if so, how much are you paying?
Yeah, I might say so. I mean,
yes, big time for me.
Yeah, because like I have him, I think, as the wide receiver 38 for the rest of the season. So he's almost a borderline wide receiver 3. He's clearly the number 2 for the Packers. I know some people, myself included, were wondering about him and Allison. The snaps don't lie. Geronimo Allison is playing like 40% of the snaps, guys. He's not a full-time player. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is. He just saw double-digit targets last game. So yes, like he would be my number 1 waiver wire ad if he was available. And it really is like, people were panicking over him, and that's why he was such a good tournament play this week, because he was going to be under-owned in that matchup. But yeah, the perception on him was that he was droppable after week 2 for whatever reason. I am concerned about this Matt LaFleur offense, but at the same time, anytime you get a wide receiver who can see 10 targets from Rodgers, he should be owned.
Dude, you almost just scratched off your kitty cat tattoo.
Did I?
By the way, yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. You were scratching your face.
I had
and you
an
almost
itch.
got it. I got to the point in the questions where everyone was responding to first seeing you with the cat tattoo on. If you're new to if you just joined the show, Tags lost a bet. I made him put a cat tattoo on his face. So that's why he's doing it. We're going to do some more bets like this on the live stream going forward. And Tags and I also have a live stream. I do a live stream by myself on Thursdays, talking start sit, answering your questions. Tags does one on Sundays. So if you have the opportunity, if you like these shows, subscribe so you don't miss, future notifications on these upcoming shows. So we can get you all the content that you need to hopefully win your league this year. Tags, well, let's take a couple more questions, maybe 10, 15 of them. Should I start? Oh, we'll get to the start sit questions on Thursday's show. Tags is writing his primer. I'm going to be coming out with my rankings, and there's just a lot that changes as we're researching the week. So I'm gonna hold off on all start sit questions for now. Okay, so trade offer, getting Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Howard, who you could drop, Jimmy Graham, who you could drop, giving away Aaron Rodgers, Saquon, and Humphreys. So basically, would you trade Rodgers and Saquon for Mahomes?
Yep, I would. I absolutely would. I'm moving Rodgers down as the weeks go on. Like
how far? I've moved him to QB6.
Yeah, I mean QB5 for me, so I'm moving him down. Like he was up there at QB2 when the season started, and from what I've seen, I just don't like. And like, granted, he can be better personally, but the play calling's been atrocious, and they're a much better defense, which means those pass attempts are not going to be there like we had hoped. So yeah, I mean, I would do that trade. Mahomes, I had this conversation with my wife last night because she told me. So I made fun of her at our home league draft because she drafted Patrick Mahomes in the third round. I'm like, do you not listen to anything I tell you? And everybody's like, I think it's fine. And of course they would in home league, but she asked me last night, she's like, are you still going to make fun of me about drafting Mahomes in the third? I was like, no, I can't. And if we redid drafts like today, he'd probably be in the middle of the second round for me. So
Yep.
I'm usually a late quarterback guy, but Patrick Mahomes is making everything change because he is the outlier and he is the best quarterback in the game right now.
All right, Tags. Next question. Jake says, Sony Michel, ... glue factory. What do we do with Sony Michel? I mean, can you trade him at this point, or are you just not going to get enough back?
You're not going to get enough back. I mean, this is like the classic idea that if you're out there in a league, like the people that are buying Sony Michel right now are sharp people because they're buying at the absolute floor. Like you're not Sony Michel. No one's excited to own him right now. So it's like you buy at basement prices, right? And understand that by buying at a basement price, the stock can only go up from there. If it was due to game script, great. If it was due to bad performance, if he only played 17 snaps because he fumbled in Miami in week 2, like those are things that could definitely come into play that we could see Sony Michel's value rise. The offensive line being like missing offensive linemen, missing tight ends. There's like so many things that go into this that could affect Sony Michel's play. So I'm okay with buying him low. I'm not okay with selling him low.
All right, let's see here. Is there any reason to hold on to Antonio Brown? This is a good question, Tex.
No, he should be on waiver wires. He's never going to play in the NFL again.
Really? Okay.
He deleted a lot of the tweets that he was putting out, but basically he started ripping people in the NFL and owners, and that's a big no-no. Like he's not playing in the NFL again. He's done. Antonio Brown, like it's sad. It really is because he was a great football player, but he's got a screw loose, and he's not going to play football in the NFL again.
More likely to make the Hall of Fame, Frank Gore or Antonio Brown?
It had better be Antonio Brown for his play because, I mean, if they're not factoring off the field stuff, Antonio Brown was one of the best receivers I've ever seen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Frank Gore is a lock to make it. I think Antonio Brown is a lock to not make it, but I agree with you, Tex. Yeah. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to get through the comments where it's not asking questions. Okay. Do I drop Latavius Murray or Justin Jackson to pick up Darrell Williams or Jamal Williams? We didn't talk about Jamal Williams at all for good reason. I mean, if anything happened to Aaron Jones, I think Jamal Williams would be in top 12, top 15 running back rest of the season. We've seen him in that role before. He can be a workhorse, but as long as Aaron Jones is healthy.
He'd be Leonard Fournette. He'd be like a top 18 running back, and he'd be boring, but he'd have volume and he'd be fine.
Much better offense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say much better offense because that offenses look like crap, but but some of those touchdowns are going to start going towards the wide receivers. Like Devontae Adams is not going to continue to be, a non-factor in fantasy football leagues. That's not going to happen. Yeah. He's actually going to go off on Thursday night. But I mean, like someone mentioned Justin Jackson. I saw someone else in the chat mention Justin Jackson. If he's available, and by the way, I wouldn't drop Latavius Murray for those guys. But in regards to Justin Jackson, if he's available, he is going to be a top 30 play this week, and he's got a chance to like legitimately crush Miami. Miami is facing an average of 34 rushing attempts per game. And this is a fun stat. Since the start of the 2018 season, no Chargers running back, including Melvin Gordon, has totaled more than 19 carries. That means that Justin Jackson's locked in for like at least a dozen, if not 15 carries this week against Miami. Oh, yes.
Yep. I love Justin Jackson, man. He could be an absolute superstar if he gets a chance. You watch him run. This guy is really good. I can't wait to see him this week. I'm going to be watching that game start to finish just so I can see Justin Jackson.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, it should be fun.
Who do you prioritize? McLaurin, MVS, Hardman, or Dorsett? I'm assuming this is an 8 or 10 team league.
McLaurin F1.
Why do you call him F1? What does that mean?
F1. So if you didn't grow up like loving cars, the McLaren F1 is like a multi-million-dollar car. It's a one-seater. Okay. This car is a bullet. It's awesome. It's just sick. And so McLaren F1 is so much better than Scary Terry. Like Scary Terry, right. Don't tell anybody that nickname. Like F1 is the new nickname for him, and that's who I'm going with here. Like he's another guy that continually moves up my rankings. Even if Case Keenum isn't great, that's fine. But McLaurin has chemistry with the backup quarterback, Dwayne Haskins. They played in college together. So, yeah, McLaurin is definitely somebody that, like, he's a must-own right now, and he would be the one of those guys.
Wow, man, that car looks sweet. I just posted a I just posted an image in the comment section. Holy cow!
Yeah, that car is
That's a much better nickname than Scary Terry.
Yeah, F1 is like one of the coolest nicknames out there. If you grew up knowing what the McLaren F1 was.
Jimmy says, "My backfield is Sony Michel and Chris Carson. I don't need advice, just prayers."
Well, prayers to your running back situation.
Well, I did a Reddit AMA earlier today, and I got so many questions like that. Like, dude, my running backs are James Conner and Sony Michel. What do I do? Is my season lost? First of all, James Conner had 3 really bad matchups. But what this basically comes down to is I'm looking at my rest of the season rankings. There's like 10 guys I feel confident in, and everyone else just has major question marks. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, James Conner is someone I'm panicking about. The reason that I think I'm more panicked about him than I am Sony Michel, because Michel plays for high scoring offense. He is still getting goal line carries. He's going to score touchdowns, but James Conner, I'm really worried about. That offensive line hasn't been great. Mason Rudolph completed just 2 passes beyond the line of scrimmage last week. That's a problem.
Conner, by the way, is last in missed tackles forced per carry in the NFL right now.
Yeah, it hasn't been good for that Steelers team this year. So giving up that first round pick seems a little odd. I mean, Fitzpatrick's a good player, but that might come back to haunt them.
All right, trade offer tags: Kenny Golladay and Aaron Jones.
Okay. For
one of my favorite buy lows right now, because he has had 3 treacherous matchups, Davante Adams.
That's
it's tough. Not even close for me. I'm taking Adams and running to the bank.
Well, it's tough for me because it depends on the depth of your league and who you have to replace those players, because you almost have to add in a player. You have to say Davante Adams and this player versus those two, because those are the two. Like there's someone's replacing the running back in the starting lineup. Like Aaron Jones leaving, that means someone else is getting promoted to that spot. So if you're like Davante Adams and Miles Sanders, yes. If you're saying Davante Adams and Frank Gore, no.
What about Davante? What about Davante Adams and pick up Rex Burkhead?
No, you don't want to start sexy Rexy every week. Like,
I mean, you don't want to start him every week, but the thing is, it's not like
that's not really buying low on Davante Adams.
Adams and Golladay is larger than the difference between Aaron Jones and Rex Burkhead.
But that's not really buying low on Davante Adams. That's like paying full price. And that's why it's like, those trades I'm not really, I prefer to like win a trade and I want to feel really good about it. That one I would be like,
I think you're winning.
I like Adams a lot. I think he's a great buy low, but I don't think that's a really low price.
Where do you have him rest of the season? Top 3 wide receivers?
Yeah, I still have him as number 3.
Number 3. Okay, I've got Julio, Hopkins, and Davante Adams. If this was offered to you before the draft, if you could get a first round pick for a 3rd and a 5th, you would do it in a heartbeat, Tags, and you've still got Adams. And
well, Aaron Jones wouldn't be a 3rd anymore, and Golladay would probably be like a 3rd or 4th rounder. So I mean,
man, neither of these guys have improved their status at all.
Aaron Jones has. People were worried about Jones, and that's why he was falling into the 3rd round. They were worried about the timeshare.
He just got out-touched by Jamal Williams in week 3. You're not worried about him?
I know, but he scored 2 touchdowns in that game. He was fantastic against the Vikings. Like, they were 2 tough matchups against the Broncos and the Vikings and the Bears. So it's like that schedule has been pretty terrible to start the year. And knowing that Aaron Jones is a top, I think he's a top 5 running back right now. Yeah, that's pretty good.
All right, let's take 2 more questions, Tags. This one: would you rather hold on to DK Metcalf or Hardman?
DK, he's a long-term solution, whereas Hardman might be a better play for a couple weeks here, but once Tyreek Hill comes back, Mecole Hardman's like role just disappears.
Last one, and by the way, if we didn't get to your questions, I'm really sorry. I wish we could get to every single one of them. Text and I try to get to as many of them as possible on Twitter as well, at Mike Teglier NFL, at Bobby Fantasy Pro. We also post all our articles every week. Tags posts his rankings on Wednesday with the primer. I post my rankings on Thursday, and I pin it to the top of my page. I also do my quick grades article on Fridays, which tells you my recommendations for start sit. Again, we're at Bobby Fantasy Pro, at Mike Teglier NFL, and you can get a lot of your questions answered that way, or we'll try to get to as many of them in our notifications as possible. Now, Tags, here's the last one. What are some running back trade targets for Chris Carson?
Running back trade targets, one for one trades, really, like I hate them actually, because I think it's impossible, because it basically just comes down to opinion, and because you value someone, like it's really tough to make one for one trades. And I think that's where it's like, I'm going to pull up my rest season rankings right now, so I'll tell you which running backs that I would contemplate trading him away for, but I'm not selling crazy low. I'm not a guy like completely like freaking out and saying
Right.
he's never going to get a carry again because Rashad Penny is hurt. And again, CJ Prosise is not the guy. So, I
And
mean,
Pete
if
Carroll
you,
said, I'm not worried about it. He's still our starter without question.
yeah, and the territory that I would think about is like Kerryon Johnson. I would think about
Wow.
I would think about Leonard Fournette, but I don't want to do it. I would Todd Gurley. I would think about, even though he whatever. I would take Derrick Henry for Chris Carson.
Me too. I would take Derrick Henry for Chris Carson. I would think about Joe Mixon and Marlon Mack. Besides that, I mean, I guess you're a lot lower on Chris Carson than I am. Like, I put out the tweet, hey, pick up Rashad Penny now. I think he could be a league winner. That's like 30% chance Carson loses his job. And then, yeah, Penny's a league winner. And I'm worried about Carson, but there's also a 70% chance he's the full-time starter. If he's the full-time starter, name 5 running backs you'd rather have than him. You can't do it. Zeke, McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, anybody else? Nick Chubb, David Johnson? No, I'd rather have Carson.
I mean,
If he's the starter,
right? If he's the starter, yeah. If he's the starter, I'd take him over. I mean, I don't know if I want to go.
So I'm saying
Le'Veon
70% chance he's a top 5 fantasy running back, man.
I don't even know if those are. I don't think those odds are that good anymore. I think if Penny was healthy, I think he would have lost the job. I think Carroll's saying that because Penny's not healthy.
Okay, that's a fair way to put it. Hey, by the way, guys, if you enjoyed the show, especially Tag's face tattoo, hit the like button. Tell our bosses that you enjoy the content. And again, I've got a live stream coming up on Thursday. I'm going to be talking start sit, answering your questions. Tags has a live stream on Sunday mornings every single week, giving you updated injury news before the game, start sit advice with your Q&A. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your football.